I'm Jerry Keese, and I'm the Worldwide Director for Informix. I'm essentially responsible for the Informix business. One of the industry verticals that the Informix business has been focused on this year is energy and utilities. We have a unique technology that offers solution providers a unique competitive advantage over any of the other database vendors in the business. The concept behind energy and utilities is most of the providers around the world are moving to a concept of smart meters. So, you used to have a meter on your house and a guy would come by once a month and he would read your utility usage and he'd send you a bill. Well, today we're very concerned about managing our energy consumption, and so we've moved to a concept of meters that are actually wirelessly connected to the internet. So every 5 or 10 or 15 minutes, they're actually sending data back to a collector that is then used to assess how much energy a community is using or how much energy your home is using. And what has resulted in that is massive amounts of data that solution providers have today been consumed with figuring out how to load that data. So if you think about a community with 1 million meters, and you think about a relational database like Oracle, every 15 minutes they go read those 1 million meters and they create 15 million records in the database. 15 minutes later they do another read, another 1 million records. 15 minutes later, so you can imagine how the data explodes over a short amount of time. With Informix, we offer both relational database and we have native support for time series data. So time series data are data types where you're reading something every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes. And we store it in a much more organized format. So rather than creating 1 million rows every time we read it, the first time we read the 1 million meters, we will create 1 million rows. The next time we read those 1 million meters, we add a value to each of those rows. So we still have 1 million, right? But we're storing the data this way, in a row format. And the advantage that this provides solution providers is we are much more efficient in terms of the storage utilization. And we also are significantly faster in both loading and retrieving or querying the data. An example of a proof of concept that we did with a utility provider in Texas a few months ago was they actually have 1 million meters in production, and they were running another database, and they were in a situation where it was taking them over 8 hours to load 1 million meters worth of data. And then it was taking them another 8 hours to run the reports to do the analytics. And what they looked at was they said, okay, at 1 million meters, it's already taken us 16 hours a day to consume this data. And we want to scale up to 3 million meters. So they came to IBM and they said, this isn't going to work long term. We need a better solution. And so the IBM team went in and we sat down with them and we looked at their requirements, and we took the exact same environment, and with time series, we were actually able to load the data in 16 minutes. And rather than using 1.2 terabytes of data, we stored that information in 350 gigabyte. So think about it, in 1 million meters, we're already 60 to 70 times faster, and we're using 1/3 the space. And they need to scale up to 3 million meters. So that's the type of advantage that we can provide an end user. If you consider the energy and utilities industry worldwide, most countries are being mandated to move to this smart meter type solution, right? So it's not a choice, it's a requirement. And every single utility provider is struggling with, how am I going to consume massive amounts of data? They're not even to the point yet of where they're going to do the analytics on the data. They can't figure out how to get it into the database, right? So typically what you'll see with the utility provider when they're trying to assess how to meet this requirement, they'll do a benchmark with maybe 10,000 meters, everything looks great, right? But then they roll into production and maybe they're going into an environment with 1 million meters, 5 million meters, 35 million meters. We're working with a utility provider today that's going to go to 35 million meters, reading them every 15 minutes. So you're talking about billions of records in the database if you're going relational. One significant advantage is that the cost of entry with Informix. So we recently ran a benchmark. It was published a month ago, and it was a meter data management benchmark. We did it with a partner called AMT Cybex. They have an MDM offering. They're based out of the United Kingdom. And the benchmark was 100 million meters where we did a reading of every meter every 30 minutes. Now, it isn't just a question of loading the data. They go through a validation, error, and estimation process. Because if you think about these meters being wirelessly connected, there's going to be situations where you have some data droppage and data lossage, and regulations require them to account for every bit of that data. So they go through an 18-step process to ensure that the data that they read is consistent and accurate. So 100 million meters every 30 minutes in less than 8 hours. So if you think about the earlier example, we had this utility provider who had 1 million meters that they couldn't read in 8 hours. We're doing 100 times as many meters in 7.5 hours, taking it through a complete validation and error process and a billing cycle. And all this was done on a Power 7. So if you think about your investment and your cost of entry, you're talking about a $200,000 piece of hardware that can scale to meet the demands of any utility provider in the world today. Or you can go with an alternative, and you're looking at maybe $2.5 or $3 million worth of hardware to accomplish maybe half the performance and a fifth of the data. So this year we've been focused specifically on energy and utilities with time series. But if you think about the requirement for a time series data type, and you think about a Smarter Planet initiative, just about anywhere that you're thinking Smarter Planet, there's typically a requirement to consume and analyze data that's read on a time-based interval. So any type of application that reads sensors, for example. I was talking to a customer today from France, and he was talking about nuclear energy and talked about the sensor requirements there. It's a perfect application for time series. We have a partner in the United Kingdom called Traffic Master, and what Traffic Master sells is a service to the UK industry, essentially to provide traffic routing based on congestion, accidents. It's real time, and so they're routing cars, right, to get them most efficiently to work or to home, and they rely very heavily on this time series technology. We had a partner called Cold Set Printers who recently implemented a solution with time series and a number of components from our Rational brand. And what Cold Set Printers did was they took a step back and they were looking at their competitors in the industry. They print books and magazines, and they were looking at their cost of manufacturing. And they came to a conclusion that if they could do a better job of managing their energy consumptions, then they could drive their cost of operations down significantly. So they implemented the time series technology a year ago, and they now can compare their cost of operation from 2010 to 2011, and they've seen a 10% drop in energy utilization. And again, it's reading this time series data, consuming it in the database, and then going through and doing the analytics and making intelligent decisions about this information so that they can run their plant more efficiently. I'm Jerry Keese. I'm the Worldwide Director for Informix. If you're interested in the technology, you can go to ibm.com/Informix. You'll find links there that talk specifically about the time series technology and the rest of the portfolio as well. And if there's something there that interests you and you want to talk further about it, email me, call me, and I'll be glad to sit down and talk to you.